I want to remind you again, because of one or two things I was planning to say, about how there is a kind of basic core that's somewhere close to the secret of all of this, as much as a 3D secret exists, that is so easy to miss that I have to point out to you that it's so easy to miss. Such as, the first one I want to point out to you, is this paradigm that I conjured up, sort of pointing out to you that, if you recall, I said that everything could be seen as a combination, as a working of the dynamics of everyone apparently being, in any situation, a dominant personality, a dominant force, a dominant factor, and the other person, people, groups of people, institutions involved, submitting to the former. Now, I've been playing around with this off and on for over a year, and I have really been talking about it a little faster for the last few weeks, and I have bounced toward it and backwards and dropped it for a week or so to give you a chance, those of you who heard something, or at least took my assurance that it could be of supreme importance as a kind of template. So I want to tell you again point blank, if you didn't take the challenge, everything can be explained. Not that this is the explanation, because there is no 3D explanation, but everything can be explained. I could take on William F. Buckley if he understood anything, just with his glib tongue. I could take on the Pope. I could take on anybody. I could take on Freud's grandson if he's still talking. I could take on any question in the world. Any. And all you have to do is listen. You wouldn't have to be involved with this. You wouldn't have to have any metaphysical leanings. All you'd have to do is be fairly sophisticated, even in a city sense. And I could explain, as well as any, just ordinary people, everything going on that basis. All religion. I could explain, how about this? This seems to be popular now, the lifestyles of the rich and famous, the National Enquirer, celebrity worship. That's easy to explain. To read a biography. But just to pick up these kind of newspapers that just give some kind of little, if it's just a one-line piece of gossip about all these famous people, what are you doing? You're submitting. It is an operational that from afar you're taking that there is somebody because of their fame, which is what is fame. Fame is that they're apparently dominant. Why is it you'll go and pay money to see some group, and they announce the group or the performer, and they're pre-sold, that is, they're already famous, and they walk down the stage and you applaud. Your heart begins to beat. You begin to sweat. And they haven't done anything. You paid $20, but you seem to already be having fun. Oh, it's him, it's him, it's him. Forget any kind of psychological explanations, which could explain something. You could say, well, I have his album at home and I love him and I just know I'm going to love him tonight. All right. But I can explain it in a new way. I can explain it in any new way, if people can hear it, is in fact a better way, because the old way everybody's already used to. But it can be explained on the basis that as far as you're concerned, this person, this stranger, this famous person that you paid to see, vis-a-vis you, is dominant, and you submit to him or her. And so to you, that person is famous. And it could be, if somebody wanted to carry it any further, they could give these so-called psychological explanations that you and other people might sit around and think, gee, how much fun it must be to be Johnny Carson, to be making $50 million a year. Good grief, right now, here I sit in my underwear, eating a white bread sandwich, watching TV, watching him, and it was taped. He is now back home in Malibu or somewhere. With that much money, just imagine what he's doing. All right, they can call that kind of vicarious thrills. Why do people read about people that supposedly they hate? Why do people read biographies of Mussolini and Stalin? All those explanations are childish. They're good enough for the city, but they're not good enough for you. You are submitting to the person. Anybody that you consider to be famous, whether you use the word or not. If you just turn around the line at the grocery store and a name on one of those newspapers will make you pick it up, then you're submitting. That is celebrity worship, whether it be Johnny Carson now, or whether it be Jesus Christ. You are submitting. To you, the person is dominant. And forget, you don't have to get into these details, because the details distract from it of imagining how great it must be to be Jesus or Johnny Carson. That's not it. It is, in a sense, it is another version of God. That there is somebody that I would submit to. There is somebody I am submitting to. There is somebody, if he comes to town, Carson or Jesus Christ, I'd pay up to $20 to see them, just to hear about them. I'll pay 75 cents to buy this newspaper just to read the latest gossip about them. It is all dom/sub. That's all the dance of the dominant and the submissive. It is friendship. It is families. It is politics. You can say that's ridiculous that for people they're covering the news now, the upcoming primaries, that there it is, little farmers out in Iowa, and they come into town and they're wearing buttons, a man and his wife, with a 5th grade education, saying we're for Gephardt or Paul Simon, and somebody from the network say, well, why? And the guy goes, it's like a possum that's been trapped in the road by headlights. I like his ideas on unemployment. Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. Maybe he never even heard of him. He is submitting. It's a form of God worship. It's a form of Father worship. It's a form of Johnny Carson worship. It is a submission. Everybody wants somebody in some situation, even the most dominant people. So I threw that in somewhat in passing several meetings back. I pointed out to you that if you didn't know it, all the world's great tyrants, maybe nobody knows it but me, but now I've pointed it out to you, but all the world's great tyrants, trust me, in their little heart, had a little niche somewhere that, they just, even if they were maybe ashamed to or afraid to, or they had some crude understanding that they should not go out and let the people see them do it, I give you my word, all the world's great tyrants, I mean the real good ones, they really wanted to go somewhere and prostrate themselves and just kiss the feet of some imaginary god, not a real living person. Because it is a continuing dance. We're talking now about a 3D world which does not take into full consideration even the movement of the triads. And so it is not simply a linear process of these big fish eating little fish and little smaller and smaller fish. It doesn't go in that kind of linear line. It's not quite that simple. But anyone that would apparently just be dominating as hell and just seem to dominate everybody around them, they submit also. They want to submit. They want to be submissive to somebody. Whether it seems to show up to the people that are playing the submissive part is of no consequence. In line with that, I wanted to also point out a little something. Since I have admitted, it wasn't necessary, I don't guess, but since I have admitted that there is, shall we say, a certain amount of difficulty in conveying what this is about, you people trying to convey it, there's a certain amount of inherent information barriers for me to convey this information from me to you. There is a certain, why not admit, apparent difficulty in doing this when you begin to believe that you hear certain parts of it. So let me point out another way to look at a very strange fashion of a difficulty in doing this. Because one way to explain this kind of activity, if you can hear this, would be that life is almost trying to teach a few people to be as little submissive as possible. That from one viewpoint you could say, just pick out the great spiritual heroes, that what their lives seem to represent from a certain view, what they seem to have been talking about, if you get right down to the core of it, was almost as though they were trying to teach people to be just non-submissive in the 3D world, not to submit to anything. And then, of course, it comes out, don't submit to evilness. But it is almost, and I'm including this right now, in a sense, if you can hear what I'm saying, it is almost an encouragement, a series of or strings of new information at any given time, and not excluding this, that is to make you as little submissive as is possible, comma, and here's the difficulty. But to do it, of course, you got to submit, in this case, to me. If it wasn't for me, it would be somebody else. I don't mean that I am the important cog here. But the whole thing is that this activity always, now, in all times past and all times sideways, could be seen as an attempt of life using a person and a group of people, but it's almost an attempt to not be dominated by any more than is absolutely necessary in this life. Not just politically, not just apparently externally, but everything, even by your own molecular structure, is to submit to domination as little as possible, except to learn how to do it, to even be directed by it, you have got to just almost totally submit. The more you submit, the more information you get. The more that you will hear and heed me, the more you can begin to do it yourself. But here it is, you start out, and you're trying to go in two directions at once again, as always. To learn how not to submit by totally submitting to somebody to say, listen, I'm going to tell you how not to submit, but it ain't going to work unless you listen to exactly what I'm saying and do it. I mean totally. And that's what it amounts to. So if anybody needs any more of my acquiescence as to apparent difficulties in doing this, then you got it. Take it to the city and put it in the money market. It is strange, though. All right. Try another paragraph. Man is a state with notoriously unsecured borders. Secured, I will almost go with what I would suspect. I didn't go checking or read up anywhere, but this is in general what would be used in the ordinary run of the external world if they were trying to talk about the actual secured borders of a state, of a group of people. That the borders would be firmly established. To make them secure, they'd have to be firmly established. And I would suggest to you now, not talking about Bulgaria, but not talking about the state of man, the firmly established borders would be the ends of I in the equation of I plus not I. Another aspect of secured borders for a state out there, for an actual nation, would be that the borders would have to be known and recognized. That is, by the not I's in the equation, would have to recognize the borders. You can't secure them unless those outside your borders, your neighbors. And I plus not I, all the not I's have got to acknowledge that, yeah, there's the borders. The borders are the extent of I. And another aspect, the only other one I'll throw in, if you were talking about actually securing the borders of a nation, would be that the nation, the state, would have to have defensive capabilities. Yeah. That is, they could apparently keep the not I's out of the I's. Keep them on their side of the border. All right, if you had that, and we were now talking about an external state, a nation, a principality, a kingdom, then the kingdom would have secured borders. They could defend it. They knew where it was. Their neighbors knew where it was and acknowledged it, whether they liked it or not. But both sides, internally and externally, the borders were established. The neighbors recognized that, yeah, you do claim that. and the claimant, that is, the nation involved that has established the borders and said this is our limits, this is our border, have the capacity to defend it. Now back to my original statement. Man is a state with unsecured borders. Now I said notoriously, but I don't think we had room to get that. If we looked upon man before I tie this in, if we looked upon man as being what he is, a macro collection of cells, and looked upon man, the organism himself, as being a large cell, then you have got again the case of if man were a single cell, or if his collection of cells represented on a larger scale a cell, then you would have a cell that would have a plasma wall, the cellular wall, would have to be a whole new definition if we were going to speak biochemically. It would be a cellular wall, that is, borders that would demand a whole new definition because the borders are non-secured. It would be a cell that hardly had a definitive border. So if man were a single cell, which I repeat to you again, this is not all allegory because everything that takes place in man comes from the cell. And all we're dealing with is running up the biological scale from cells to tissues to organs to systems, and then you've got man. You know, if we had religious people listen to this, then they can go into little swoon dreams about, oh yes, man, you know, this great spiritual force. It's a whole bunch of cells. And everything that's taking place, the whole purpose of cells is the same purpose of human life. To find, to expend energy. There's no difference. But you would have, if we were looking at man, I repeat, not totally, not capriciously in an allegorical sense, but if you looked upon man as being a cell, then you would have a cell that had notoriously unsecured borders. Now I'd like to point out, if any of you are following this right quick, one more time let me say this is not in any real capricious manner allegorical. It is founded on everyday city-accepted biological premises and facts. But if you looked upon man being this kind of cell, then look upon what I've been pointing out for a while. I have pointed out that you could see that the whole conflict, apparent conflict in human life, you could look upon the whole aspect of man staying alive as being a matter of contrast. But now look at this matter of contrast. You have, if man were looked at as a cell, you have a running battle, it would appear in the city, of man the cell trying to keep all of his neighbors out, and he cannot secure his borders. Now there is even upping the stakes of a contrast to take your breath away. What does life seem to be in the city? All you got to do is be back at the level of ordinary consciousness, and what have you got? You would have man as a cellular state. Back to my original statement of man being a state with notoriously unsecured borders. If you had man as a cellular state, then you would have energies. That is, foreigners. This is the way it appears now. This is not the final statement of reality, but this is the way it feels even, not just appears, that you are surrounded by foreigners. Outside energies. Let's see, what do people call it in the city also? The environment. Events. Stuff. Shit happens. Isn't that the latest philosophical insight? All right, it's as though these energies is what it amounts to, though, flow across your borders at will. And in the city, the feeling is that it is a non-stop fight by the time you get to be 11 or 12 years old, and some other kid grabs your baseball glove. If you're a man, or boy man, if you're a girl, I guess, times past, somebody grabbed your doll. It's as though your borders are continually, not just under attack, but just strangers. They just wander in and out over your border, and there's nothing to be done about it. All right, those of you now laughing a little bit, don't let it get by you. You can look upon life in the city, that is, ordinary existence. All my descriptions of life being a contrast, being a struggle between a partnership, being a kind of struggle between established powers and would-be revolutionists, you can also see it this way, that it is man as though he is a cellular state with notoriously, I keep saying that, I'm just saying that it's almost a laugh, the way it feels in the city, that he has secured borders. It's as though every not-I in the world, every not-I in his damn brother, they just walk up and the people just wander in and over your borders, just back and forth. As I said, in such a way, if we were, in a biochemical sense, looking at man as a cell, this is beyond permeable. It's as though it is a non-existent, it is a non-event border. It's there. Everybody feels it. At least it's there at the edge of my skin. I stop here and then you start. You and everybody else. That there is some limit. There is some border somewhere in the equation of I plus not I, even if they don't like my equation. People in the city say, all right, there is a difference. I stop here somewhere. And then you start. So don't be pushing on me. Don't even touch me. Don't be hitting on me. Leave me alone. But nowadays, the physical leave me alone is not all, well, the physical fear of being trampled on is not as strong, is not as pressing as that which would apparently be non-physical. But it is still the feeling that I have borders, but they're not secure. They don't fit the aspects that I even used when I was starting out, as though I was speaking about an externally extant state, nation, community. Your borders in the city are not really firmly established. If pushed, you might say, if you were a city person, all right, at the very least I stop, my borders are my skin. Leave me alone. Don't touch me, don't cut me, don't push me, don't shoot me, don't ruffle my hair and say, good boy, just don't touch me. You stay back over there and don't get any closer to me. But that doesn't even work, because then somebody can say, well, boy, you sure are touchy. What kind of smart ass are you? And you feel like you've been invaded. Well, don't even talk to me like that. Don't do that. So the person goes, all right, I won't talk to you. And they wander off the other side of the room, and they keep going. And you feel like, again, that a small scouting party, if not one person, without your permission, and the guards, if you got any at your borders, cannot seem to do a thing about it. Somebody just anytime they want to can go. And it's as though you have been invaded again. All right? So you don't seem to have secured borders because you don't seem to have a firm knowledge of where they are. And then also, a second aspect I pointed out, your neighbors, the not-I's, do not seem to recognize it. Or else they wouldn't go. Or else they wouldn't grab you. Or else they wouldn't say things like, well, who the hell do you think you are? It's as though they just don't recognize that you have any borders. And the third aspect, among others, I could have mentioned, I point out that man is a state with notoriously unsecured borders in that he lacks, apparently, defensive capabilities. Now, certainly people can push each other, they can hit each other. One person can turn to another and say, don't look at me funny like that, while they're looking at that person funny. Look at the person and say, don't look at me like you're mad, damn it. But that's not much of a defense. Well, in other words, it does not stop. Find the biggest sore head in the city. That's not going to stop people from being mad at him. There does not seem to be, under ordinary city conditions, any way to profitably defend your borders if you knew where they were. Even just trying to find them if it was like a matter that, well, I'm trying to establish them somewhere. And so leave me alone until maybe I get this all figured out. And you can't seem to make people leave you alone. So here you've got this situation. Now I'm going to jump back and forth as always right quick, all the way from I'll say textbook biochemical descriptions. I'm not trying to, by any means, offer lessons in biology, but taking the general accepted premises which fit, again, but simply because of the fact that they are correct on the cellular level, of some of the descriptions that the whole purpose of cells, the purpose is to find and to expend energy. The metabolic system that keeps us alive is cellular. That's it. There's no secret about that. But all you've got to do then is non-allegorically see man as a collection of systems, which are a collection of organs, which are a collection of tissues, which are a collection of cells, and you see man, you see human life as being exactly, will perfectly fit that description. I couldn't have done it any better. That the purpose of life is to find and to expend energy. But this is done. It does not take insight much stronger than that of a gannet or a newt. To see that the expansion of energy requires that there be interplay between the various states. But who feels that to be the natural condition of human existence in the city? Contraire. It's, hey, an arm's length's a terrible thing to waste. You motherfuckers stay away from me. If I want to deal with you, it's on my terms. If I want to talk to you, if I want to visit with you, if I want to be instructed by you, if I want your opinion, I'll tell you what it is. I'll tell you when I want it, etc., etc. And that's not the way it works. It's as though all men under ordinary conditions are states. As I started out with my revolutionary picture some months back, they are each person as though they were a state, but now I want you to see that another way, an expanded way to look at this contrast, this eternal struggle, this eternal feeling that there is a struggle going on between me and everybody else, between me and life itself, between me and forces I don't even understand, or I can't recognize, I can't identify, can be seen as this. That I am a state of some kind. I am me, I'm Fred or Mary, but I got borders that I cannot secure. I can't even hardly go to sleep. Dreams invade my borders. You can see the conflict. You can see the nature of life of people, and fill in the blank. People trying to get ahead. People trying to be more spiritual. People trying to become more intellectual. People trying to become more artistic. People trying to become more self-sufficient. People trying to become more outwardly directed. But it's all on this basis. You can see it this way. It's as though each person is a state with borders that are almost totally unsecured. And there is this feeling, although no one has ever described it verbally in this manner, as though everyone in the city is almost every waking hour and second is trying to defend their borders of I from not I. Even if it doesn't seem like a direct attack, that right this second nobody is actually attacking me, but it's like a continual encroachment. Everybody else has got no goddamn business stepping into my state. I'm not stepping into their state. I recognize that they are them. I'm not there bugging them. Can't they give me just a moment of peace? If it's not them, it's the goddamn radio. I'm minding my own business. I was trying to have an important thought, and so on the radio, they're pointing out they called some more inside trading in Wall Street, and you don't have to hear more. Goddamn, I lost money last time this happened. What little bit I saved, some of those smart alecks up there on Wall Street go and then they dick around. They always taking us little guys. It's the same story over and over. That my borders have been crossed. They'll do it in the middle of the night. I'm asleep. And they'll do it on the Singapore Stock Exchange. People I don't even know. It's like they just treat my borders as though it's some kind of picnic. That the whole world's going, whee, and they're wearing funny hats, and they just trample back and forth, and nobody gives a damn. And of course, by the time you hit about the age of 21, at least, you also understand it's probably, at least momentarily, will get worse if I try to suddenly stand up and say, hey, will all you clowns watch it? This is me. I'm trying to sleep. I'm trying to run a decent state here. I'm trying to do better. And you people just treat, it's as though the rest of the world, in many conditions, that everybody else out there is playing yoo-hoo. It's like every not I. It's like everybody else in the world, everybody sometimes has got on nose and glasses and runs in over my board and goes, and here it is, just for a few moments. Not like a joke as well as anybody else, but sometimes, damn it, you try to be serious and you're trying to think about something, or you got a pressing problem, and suddenly you look up and it's like hundreds of thousands of people, if not one person. They suddenly run over your border again, just out of nowhere. You didn't invite them. And this wasn't where it is. And here they run with those damn funny hats and the nose and the glasses, doing Groucho Marx walks, and they go, yoo-hoo! It's as though that is the nature of life. Did you try to do a little job? You try to earn a living. You try to cut the grass. You try to wash your car. A few things that seem to spot up here and there. But if you look at it a certain way, it's as though almost all your time, you and everyone in the city, is spent with a feeling that I should be right now either trying to guard my borders or worrying about why I can't or how I can. How can I make people see it? What can I do about this? There is an awareness, of course, about these terms, that I am a state without secured borders. And you could look upon very correctly, very profitably, up to date, as a matter of fact, updated. All ideas, from religious ideas, philosophical ideas, psychological ideas, from apparent traumas and bruises from your forefathers, from your parents, from your peers, from the environment. If you look upon you look upon man as being a state almost devoid of any secured borders, then you can see that there is a flow of energy going on back and forth, in and out of you, that seems to be operating almost at will. Almost at will. And you can look upon every human activity. I'm not going much further with this. I'm going to leave it with you for a while, if not forever. You can see every human activity, from hobbies to vocations to humanitarian endeavors, yellow, red, and blue circuit activities will fit into what I have described as each person being as though they were a state with unsecured borders, and that all activity fits into a reaction to that reality. See if I can pull in matters related to that. At a 3D level of consciousness. Now you got to watch this. This is the second one that I gave my little prologue concerning. I'm going to get into another area that is accepted as being so true, it is just trite. But I believe tonight might be the time that some of you, or at least I'll get you on the track, can see again a piece of the masterwork of life. People do not understand this at all, and you have never understood it in the way in which I'm going to try and direct your attention. So, at the 3D level, there are apparently two ways that human life is apparently affected, driven. And they could be described as apparently the world of events out there, what's going on, like the environment, and the world of what seems to be going on inside of me, my own states of consciousness. The apparent out there the neighboring states, and they're apparently in here. Me, my perceptions, my feelings, my consciousness, and my interpretations of what's going on out there. Now it seems clear enough that there is some kind of vision like that what I think about what's going on is not necessarily the same thing as what's going on, etc., and vice versa. I want you to try and see this in a very specific way. Now that's accepted in the city. All of your consciousness accepted that long before you met me. You had no choice. It wasn't capable of being analyzed and accepted or rejected. It just is. That's as much a part of you as your breathing. And you did not learn it. That is, you did not learn it from your environment. You were not taught this. The way in which I was going to try and direct your attention is there seems to be two voices talking to people in the city. There seems to be the voices of the events out there, and then there's another voice. And this voice is the reality of what I just mentioned last time in passing, that all of you, everybody, has a cellular phone. They just don't recognize it up until now. But so I'm going to have to point out to you that you got one. And that is the other voice. That's the voice that's talking to you. Now, try and listen good. I'm going to increase the triteness. I'm going to increase the proverbial wisdom that everybody knows and accepts. Everybody. And it's this. That what goes on out in the world is not as important as how you react to it, as how you think about it, is the way in which you perceive it. Now I say that that is proverbial and trite even to a higher degree than I started it out. It is on the basis that life makes people say that. Your grandmother could say that to you, your mother, your father, a drunk in a bar. You can be sitting at a bar with people with no education, just ordinary run-of-the-mill people, and somebody on television, a character in a movie could say something like that, and they go to a commercial, and a guy sitting next to you never met. With sincerity in his voice as much as he can have it, just good old run-of-the-mill city sincerity, can turn around and say, you know, that's true. We should all be thankful. It's not what happens to you in life. It's how you react to it. It's how you feel about it. And of course, then he forgets it. But it is a built-in truism, and it is a voice that is coming from a cellular phone in you. It is not a cultural voice. It is not a psychological voice. It is not a distraught voice, and it is not an insane voice. All right, all of you have heard that. And I was going to push the triteness into an area that requires that we consider it even more intellectually. And that would be such as psychiatrists, psychologists, sociologists. But people that would have credentials that would be impressive to the hierarchy in the city can and have stated absolutely that when it comes to the apparent importance of what goes on in one's life, whether one's father was an alcoholic, whether one's mother was a prostitute and died at an early age, that those events, as shocking, as potentially traumatic as they may sound, when it gets down to it, those events are not as important as how the individual feels about the events. A psychiatrist, a psychologist, a person with academic credentials in the city can write a book, a paper, can gain a reputation based upon that with statistical evidence, psychological proofs, philosophical lines of linear logic, but you surely know without us going into even an apparent attack on ordinary people. It is part of the masterstroke, is part of what I warned you about the danger, is it can be apparently self-evident to the point that someone is famous for pointing this out. And that same person cannot live by it, does not understand it, because they can immediately... So I have to give you an example. That the person who wrote the paper on this basis, the brand new up-to-date proof that how one individually seems to react and feel about what happens is the most important, is the determining factor of one's happiness in life, the building and formulation of one's character as opposed to what goes on out there. That same person that is famous for that goes into an absolute frenzy when they find out, when it's reported, that some Russian psychologist has taken this idea and has now had it published on the other side of the world under his name. Or that his book has been roundly drugged through the coals by some little nit shit out in San Francisco. Now you know that. That's not an attack on humanity. It could be a book. You could have found the book, and assuming that you were fairly ordinary, you could have found the book or the paper by this psychologist to be most meaningful. You could feel as though you were getting some kind of jolt from reading this book, that you'd heard that, you'd believed that before, that what you feel about life is actually more important than just the low things that go on, more or less. And you knew that. You don't know how, but you knew that. Everybody knows that. Kind of. But this guy's paper, this book, seemed to put it into focus just in a matter of 10 pages, or maybe it took 1,000. But you couldn't put it down. It seems to have solidified some of my thinking. Statistically, philosophically, the guy is such a writer. He is almost a poet. He's more than just a psychologist, and it has put real breath to this idea. It's put flesh on it. This is so meaningful to me, that's a fact. Why do I sit around and sweat life and the things that go on? Hell, my mother died at an early age, but here I was reading this book in chapter 7. He points out the percentage, even here in the Western world, of people whose one of their parents died before they reached the age of maturity. Would you believe it's nearly 20%? I never thought about that. In other words, every time I walk past the street, down the street, every fifth person has been through the same thing. At least not one area that I have, that they lost one of their parents. It's not that. As bad as that is, it's not that. It's how I feel about it. And what happens? So I have to continue this story. Suddenly the guy's wife walks in and says, bah, 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 bah. And it has gone from this apparent feeling, this apparent acceptance, this apparent new understanding of the fact. All right, the reason I was laying on that again is it is an accepted fact. You don't have to go around thinking about it. You don't have to repeat it every day in the city, but I'm telling you, it's more than a truism. It is a 3D cellular truism in the city. And yet no one understands it. Now, let me see if I can show you how to absolutely whip the shit out of that which is trite. Because the only reason it is trite, the only reason it is a proverbial truism, the only reason that it is a piece of widely held, to say the least, piece of imperfect data is this. It is a goddamn fact. And there's the masterstroke. But now listen. We don't have to speak philosophically. What I'm trying to drag some of you up to here slowly. It truly doesn't matter what goes on out there. Now, try and listen fast. Not philosophically, not because I say so and I'm not going to talk you out of it. I'm telling you scientifically. It truly doesn't matter what goes on out there. Now see if you can listen. There are two voices. There's apparently, let me just use everyday, fairly common terminology. There seems to be the voice of out there, reality. And by voice, I mean it is just your knowledge of reality. But there is a cellular voice in you. Now here's what neither you nor anyone else has ever analyzed, and it's right there. Is that voice of reality, that is the world of events, everything that's not I, that voice does not speak to you or anyone else personally. There is no individual relationship. Back to what I just said, it truly, scientifically doesn't matter what happens out there, because that is not what is talking to you or anybody. It's your own cells talking to you. So then the proverbial truth of the ideas of, hey, it doesn't really matter all that much what happens to people, because when it rains on the godly and ungodly alike. We're all going to die. We all get our peckers stepped on sometime. We all get cheated. What happens out there is not all that important. It's the kind of character. It's the kind of internal blah, blah, blah. It's your perception of it. It's the way you feel. The master stroke is that is a scientific fact, except at 3D level, you can't see it. It has to be a religious fact. It has to be a philosophical speculation. It has to become a proverb. The people go, yeah. But an eyeball cannot see itself. Never. There's no way that you can teach it to see itself. It cannot move in that direction. People are not capable of seeing that it literally is immaterial what happens apparently out there. Not through some speculation, not through some sense of trying to rearrange how it affects you, but the simple information is there for a few people is it doesn't really even talk to you. It never has. There's another voice that talks to you. Sure enough, there's no doubt your mother died. Sure enough, you didn't like it. Sure enough, it seemed to happen too early, or as they say in the papers, an untimely death, died too soon. But that was not what spoke to you. Not the event. You're aware of the fact she's dead. They called and said she's dead. You came there and she is dead. The whole event spoke to you. But that was not the voice that spoke to you. The voice that spoke to you was at the cellular level in you. That's where the so-called or the apparent pain came from. That's where reality touched you, was through your cellular voices, not from what went on out there. Never. Never has, and you can feel it. And when you do, it is a... How about a liberating shock? We got to turn the... Before we stopped here at the tape, I could tell that a handful of you were getting a quick message, and I'm not sure that I care to try and explain it or to point to you. I'm not really explaining anything. I'm pointing out what was getting some of the laughter from you, that you could touch through your memory, through your own nervous system, the reality of what I was saying. What apparently is going on in life, what other people call the events of life, what apparently is going on outside your borders, what apparently is all of the stuff outside your skin, at first blush, and of course at the city at second and 277th blush, what goes on out there is of supreme continual importance, that it just can't be denied. I got fired. Somebody ran into my car. My mother died. That this is of supreme importance. But you can feel it. You can feel that it's far beyond any kind of binary description about, well, is that important or not important? It's back to this. That it was something that caught your attention. You got fired. Your mother died. But what some of you were beginning to get us just a quick flash of was that in this sense, what apparently was the event itself is not what spoke to you. It never has been. It was not in some way the reality of finding out that your car, your brand new car, was smashed to death when you walked outside. Yeah. Or that somebody came down to the lunchroom and said they're firing everyone in Department 27, which is your department. It wasn't that. Immediately, your cellular voices, they spoke to you. And that's the only thing that's of importance. That is the only thing throughout your life that you have ever felt was on a personal, individual, speaking relationship with you. Everything else is almost, comparably speaking, if you get a feel of it, you know what I'm saying. It's almost that the rest of it is a movie that you're attending. And that's when you get a real touch of what I'm saying, that it is not theoretical, it's not philosophical. This was on a personal, individual, speaking relationship with you. Everything else is almost, comparably speaking, if you get a feel of it, you know what I'm saying. It's almost that the rest of it is a movie that you're attending. And that's when you get a real touch of what I'm saying, that it is not theoretical, it's not philosophical. This old truism that, well, it's not all that important actually what happens to you, it's how you react to it. It's close. I told you the truth. I told you more the truth. They like to say things, they like to cover themselves in the city. Since everything's everything else, they like to cover themselves by saying such things as, it doesn't matter all that much. I'm telling you that it doesn't matter. Not my theory, not anyone's theory. It's never mattered to you. You or anybody. They think it does. It's supposed to be that feeling. But it was not what happened to you. Something told you what was happening. It was your inherited, it's your birthright of your own cellular phone. Now, I could also point this out. Even though from a higher view I can continue to point out that there is no out there, that these borders are illusionary. If they're not illusionary, they're worse than that. They are a waste of time. that life has set up the appearance of having borders, and then set up in you the appearance that they can't be secured, and then set up in you the feeling that something's got to be done about this. But see, we're back to, I believe it was Monsieur Kyroots last time was pointing out that, I think he put one of the, again, distinguishing characteristics of man among other creatures is that he has the feeling he should change. No, wait. There are two characteristics. That one, and then the fact that he can't. Right, you can look upon the whole situation I was describing just then, that I am a state with borders that cannot be secured, and I don't like it. Nobody likes it. Something should be done about it, and nothing can be done about it. All right, so even though from another view I could correctly point out to you and try to get you to see on your own that there is actually no out there, that there are no events, they've never even spoken to you, that is not just relatively speaking of no importance. I'm telling you it is not important. It never has been to you or anybody. It's not something you've got to grow out of. It's not something that you become steeled, embrace yourself for, that you become less reactive to it, that I'm going to harden myself to where the events out there don't really strike the blows on me, the body blows they used to. They never have. The worst things that ever happened to you. I'm not sure I'm going to get any more of you to hear it tonight, but here I go again. The worst events that have ever happened to you instantly. Somebody says, so-and-so's happened. And you feel like, I have been smashed again. It was not the event. It was the unrecognized. You've never realized the source. It is the internal cellular phone calls. It is your cellular voices that spoke to you personally. That's what's important. Not the event. The event is almost a movie. Once you begin to feel what I'm saying, you can think back to your whole life through. Your nervous system will have to admit this if you catch it at the right angle, that it never felt any kind of closeness to these events, good or bad. It never felt any personal connection to them. The deaths, the tragedies in your life, they weren't all that close, or always at least that far. What made them personal was something else. What seems to hold men's souls and to touch their little hearts and all that poetic stuff. They're closer to the truth. It's not what apparently happened out there. But notice that I can point out, and plenty of you have already seen on good days, that there truly is no out there. But notice this. This out there, reality. Can you see what a great, great PR department it has? That this, from one view, this non-existent out there has the world's greatest spokesperson. Forget Ed McMahon or Kathy Rigby. It has the world's greatest spokesperson. And it goes by the name of Mr. and Mrs. Reality. And in the city, at line level consciousness, everyone takes that. Yeah, I guess we do have, if they were listening to this in a certain way, they could say, well, yeah, I know we each have a certain kind of ingrained, perhaps, cultural prejudice. There's certain strained views that we have. Some of us are perhaps more acute to a death in the family. Some of us are more susceptible to be insulted. So, your internal perception of what goes on out there, it does have some effect, I guess. But Jesus, the real effect in one's life, you got to face it. The real catastrophe, hurricanes, death, illness, being fired, your mate die, your mate leave you. That these are events that speak to a man. These are the events that give you a down body blow and knock the breath out of you. And it's not. It is not. It's not that those events don't happen. I'm not saying they don't happen. But you can feel it. I'm giving you a description that's never been given. And it's a fact. You can feel it. A bunch of you already have. As to whether you'll be able to feel it again an hour from now, tomorrow. Those events really don't matter. They really do not matter. They never did. It was not the event, it was your cellular voice. The PR situation in life, things are arranged in such a way that everyone believes. They won't stand up with a few people analyzing it and feeling it. Strike analyze. Some of you felt it when I said it. What went on out there is despicable. What went on out there is terrible, as it may seem in retrospect, even 5 seconds afterwards, that my mother died. I've been fired. The event, you can feel the difference. That event did not actually say anything to you. That event did not come up and put its arm around you. Whether in a good fashion, in a comforting fashion like good news, or it did not come up like the chilly hand of death and fright. It was not the event of finding out that your best friend had died, and hell, he was 6 months younger than me. Or that they fired everyone in Department 2-5. I wonder if I'm next. It was not as though a spirit of potential bad news had come up and put its little frosty arms around you and a chilly hand grabbed your heart. That's not it. What goes on apparently outside your borders, an inch away, a milli-inch away, a millimeter away then, it is not that. That event does not touch you. That is not what you ever felt, you or anybody else at city level. What can be touched? It's your cellular reaction. It's your cellular level doing as it should. Doing as it should is all it can do. Is it seeks and it expends energy. In this case, energy is apparently coming in as information. You've been fired. But there is no you've been fired out there. Your cells must metabolize that information. It is your cellular level talking to you. It was a cellular level talking to everybody in history. There is no small cellular levels. The cellular level, and everybody talks to them. The events do not talk to individuals. If you can get anything resembling a continual hold on that, or if you will do it as I have strongly suggested, try and treat it as an operational directive, that once you hear the validity, or at the very least all of you sitting here and most of you in some of the other cities right now, it should bring to mind operational validity. If you're not suddenly struck by a moment of great insight, something in the midst of that should have struck you that, ooh, maybe I didn't hear it all, but that sure is dangerous. I heard just enough to realize that if I heard any more, it might be dangerous. Then you ought to try and treat it on that basis, or I would not be insinuating some prime use for this. And all of what we've talked about in ways, I'm not saying this is the final one by any means, but in all the ways that life has talked to you about the conscious and unconscious, good spirits, bad spirits, the guides and the anti-guides, talking through man, using man's field of consciousness, his soul as a battlefield, blah, blah, blah. All that from me talking about the partnership, me talking about the ruling powers, and apparently the desire to rebel against it. For me, if I have not pointed out quite this directly, that there is another level of the dominant submissive dance going on that you do not have to look for an external partner. It's going on in you. Through all of these apparently binary divisions and new kinds of descriptions that I have given you, I'm telling you this is the most up to date. This is up to date of 1888. Right now, as you have got apparently two potential voices talking to man, and one of them seems to be out there. What seems to be taking place outside your borders. It'll be a millimeter away, thousands of miles away, time-wise, spatial-wise. They seem to speak. And there is another voice, and that is the cellular voice in you and everyone else. And if you can just get a quick feel of that, you will realize what I'm pointing to. That apparently what is going on out there, what is apparently always going on out there, didn't really say anything to you personally at the time. The information got through that such and such happened, that the words got into your ears, the sound waves, you've been fired. That got in. But that is not what spoke to you. The information came in. It invaded your borders. You couldn't stop it. But that's not what spoke to you. That was not what was of consequence. What was of consequence is the voices inside you at the cellular level spoke to you. It is in the 3D level, and it is so beyond that, but no sense of us even trying to go into it. It is a scientific fact that cannot be seen. Yeah. That is the only thing that's of any validity, that has any validity to the individual. And it apparently is otherwise. That the best that can go on, part of the masterstroke, but the best that seems to go on in the city is on a warm day when the humidity is just right. Some people will say, yeah, you know, our perception of what goes on plays a great deal in our life. It's not just the events. It's not just what goes on. It's our reactions. That is true. It is true. We should probably all remember that. We'd probably be a lot better off. Could we have two more over here? And so that's it. And if I say, hey, that's getting awfully close to secret, then everybody sing at the bar, which includes everybody in the city. They all go, yeah, well, we knew that. Hey, come on and have a drink. You're all right. Somebody said you was a weirdo. Nah, come on, shit. We all knew that. That's a fact. So you're done for. You don't have to worry about a whale swallowing you. You don't have to worry about you being Jonah. The city swallows you. Because remember, in the city, they've heard it all before. They just hadn't heard it. They just weren't listening. As to the board, I would like to point out to you that this is right in line with what I'm talking about, and if I was going to insist that there be something that you adopt for an ad hoc motto besides my jokes, would be that. And in fact, if you try and remember that on a continuing basis and you are not continually struck and astounded by it, then something's wrong with you. If you could make your cellular level correspond with you on anything resembling a correct basis regarding this, it would you would not be able to bend over to criticize. You would not have to even be involved in any kind of imaginary intellectual speculations, struggles, rationales as to why you shouldn't be particularly upset about this thing, at least not as much as that other thing, and etc. You'd be getting close to the consciousness of mythology. The world is big enough for everybody or they wouldn't be there. The world is big enough, and everybody, of course, includes everything. The world is big enough for everything. If it wasn't, how the hell did it get here? That's right, the stuff that you don't like, the stuff you just pointed out, well, the world's big enough for it, or it wouldn't be there. You just think, well, wait a minute. If we got rid of that, we'd have more room for good stuff if we got rid of that. God forbid that you ever find out that you're on somebody's list. But they think, if he wasn't there, if this person was gone, there'd be that much more room for some new James Brown albums. Well, some of them are so good, as I've said before. I will repeat myself when I acknowledge it, that I hate to, I refuse to, I hesitate to say much more about that. It is the culmination of every imagined golden rule ever put forth in the little prune brains of city dwellers. But I like the way in which I have put the molecular sound waves together for those who have hearing molecules, and then those who might have thinking molecules. And to add to your potential enjoyment, those who have visual molecules. Of course, tonight you can actually read the thing. It is not theoretical. It is not spiritual. It's not an attempt to appease cosmic forces. It is a scientific fact. And just because I put it somewhat in the form of a kind of proverbial context, it sounds like just something that would roll off somebody's tongue after they had a couple of beers, that, hey, but that is a scientific fact. And it's a fact, it's a fact, it's a fact. So people don't recognize it. But again, you probably get, on a good day, anybody in the city, especially if you get a beer in them, and say, you know what, the world's big enough for everybody. And they'd say, you're right. Of course, they can't do it, and the world may be big enough for everybody, but their thing is, the world, all right, the world's big enough for everybody, but I don't want them living next door to me. As shaky as my borders are already, you know, everybody is welcome on this planet. There's enough room for them, but I don't want them living next to me, in my neighborhood, in my backyard, bothering me. And see, that's no understanding of it all, because if you understand that the world's big enough for everybody, then nobody can bother you. If they bother you, then you don't understand this. If they're bothering you at all, I don't even want to know about your name. I don't remember that you ever came here. But you absolutely have no understanding of this, or they cannot bother you. This is scientific. It's not religious. It's not moralistic. not pseudo-moralistic. It's scientific. You got no choice. You can be blind. You could be the ones that help condemn Galileo and tell him to go home and shut up. But you're blind. The world is big enough for everybody. And the proof is always there. Because everybody's always there. Whatever it is you come up with and you point out, the world was big enough for it or you wouldn't have found it. It's not only big enough to be there, it's big enough to have somebody like you criticize it. They can include both of it. They can include everything. As long as you are apparently listening to the voices of what happens, that is, apparently you are being affected by the spokesperson, that is reality, you have cut down, you have withdrawn potential consciousness even at this level, laterally, because you are in some way always denying the right of somebody, including something, some process, some event, to be here. At the cellular level, there is no such denial. The cellular level understands what growth is. The cellular level understands what must be done for it to stay alive. And at the cellular level, there is an absolute knowledge that this is true. Of course, I can push it a little further if this will help you see it. I'm being poetic now and say at the cellular level, in fact, the little cells pray that this be true. Because if it's not, it's cut down on their potential pool of food. That means that there's some things going on that I can't eat. And you people know I'm not now talking about squashes and okras and green beans. But that means that there is energy. There is info going on that they cannot use. They're denying it. You cannot call yourself, you cannot expect that there's going to be any revolutionary change take place in you as long as you deny that there's any information, if there's any energy out there that you can't use. That means that you are not open 24 hours a day. That means that you are not open to the general public. That means that you close up at times. That means that you have got restrictions on who you'll allow to come in your store. And you can't do that. You have got to extract as much as possible energy / food / info. You've got to extract as much as possible from what seems to be outside your borders. That is, what seems to be the out there. That which seems to be somebody else. You have got to extract every possible ounce of energy out of that. A cell cannot stay alive eating off of itself. It cannot. There has to be. If we were speaking now again, you'll follow me and we'll all jump back and forth real quick from foot to foot at the biochemical level, there has got to be the expansion of energy, either through what used to be referred to as either through the process of degradation or synthesis of either breaking down larger molecules into smaller ones or building smaller ones into larger ones. And that all cells are involved with feeding themselves in some way, but there has to be energy. There has to be something to metabolize, and it has got to cross their borders. They've got to be able to take it through the plasma walls, the membranes of the cell. Now, when you jump to man being what amounts to a cell himself, you have got to, now not just ordinarily we're speaking about in a revolutionary sense, you have got to willfully make your borders not only unsecured, but you have got to turn them into a whole new definition of being permeable. You have got to extract everything that ever gets close to you. You've got to be like a frenzied eating amoeba or single cell. Everything that seems to not be you, everything that seems to be out there, everything that seems to be reality, not my consciousness, reality. You know, that stuff. you have got to extract everything possible from it. You cannot feed off of yourself. No cell can do it. You cannot feed simply off what apparently is your storehouse of knowledge. What storehouse is that? Every time you deny that somebody has the right to be here, that the world's not big enough for you, there is a piece of knowledge. If you'll jump quick, even worse yet, there is some energy that you needed to stay alive, much less to grow, that you have denied that you can consume. It's only in the city that you have gourmets. It's only in the city that people have selective appetites. Now, even in the bush, that doesn't mean that you keep eating the same thing over and over, and there may be many, many, many things that you only eat once. And it may make you sick, but you learn from it. You don't have to eat it again. But to deny that it has the right to be there, to withdraw your consciousness from something, to not have a continual awareness that the world is big enough for everything, the world is big enough for everybody, then you have partially kept out potential customers. You have unexpectedly closed up for some length of time. You lock the doors. And every time you do that, you have cut down upon the possibility of you being able to eventually, in some strange way that I'm not about to go into, begin to sort of instruct and direct yourself. But you can't do it when you are feeding selectively. You cannot do it when not only do you have unsecured borders, but you insist that they should be secured, especially in specific instances, especially when it comes to this kind of crap. And I don't hear more about that. I don't like people like that. I don't want to hear about that idea. You're not even hearing about it from out there to begin with. That's what you're missing. It's your own cells talking to you, and you're not answering the phone. It's ringing, and it's like people continue to run to the window and holler, yes, yes. And it's like you got a phone under the bed. And all your life you keep ringing the door. Hello? Yes? Who? What? As I seem wont to say periodically of late, if you begin to get a real feel for that, it sure does explain a lot. A couple of more trickies, as long as I'm in this neighborhood, about change. Well, I was pointing out off and on for the last couple of times we have been here that, again, this is, believe it or not, scientific, but not in the 3D sense, that whatever you can formulate specifically as a dream, as a plan, can never be realized. You can never achieve what you can specifically formulate. A piece of this also, I was going to, since this area seems to interest and intrigue many people, is why you can't change, because even if you could change, the cellular level within everybody can only conceive of change as being more or less the opposite of whatever the area is that I'm concerned about. In other words, the opposite, of course, my whole example of being a drunk is to be a teetotaler. But as I was pointing out to you last time, anything that has a flaw, if it's reversed, is still flawed. So even if people, can you follow this right quick, even if people could change, when they experience what seems to be the change, it is unexpectedly, and they can't ever identify what, is flawed, and so the feeling is that, well, I've done what I intended to do. As far as I can tell, I did it. And something ain't right. I quit drinking. And they don't know how to analyze what the feeling was. I quit drinking, and it's going to be like, hey, there'll be a parade every day. I'll feel like, I don't know, something will happen. The gods will speak to me. The whole universe will be so impressed I mean, after the life I've led up until now, the amounts of Jack Daniels and this and that I've consumed, this will be some sort of, at least small time, stellar celebration in the world, in the life of the universe. Where people will leave. If I could lose 70 pounds, imagine what would happen to me. And let's say that somebody does. And what happens? The change is insufficient. The change, something's not right. Something is never right. I am playing with ACBs because this is not exactly the way it works. It's not the way it seems to work even in the 3D world, but some of you should be able to follow what I'm saying. That if even this was possible, that you can apparently get just almost exactly on what you would have described, you as an ordinary person, as the change I want. I want to stop drinking forever. I can just picture, I've thought about it for years, if I could lose 75 pounds, exactly. I know what it was. I know what size dress. I know what size clothes I could wear then. I know how it would look. And you could lose. That is the figure. You've got it specifically formulated. You just know what it would entail, and you could do that exactly. What I'm saying is, from some city view, you actually secured the change you wanted. It still wouldn't feel right. And there's a scientific, it's not psychological. That which seems to be flawed cannot be reversed without being flawed. That which apparently can be done is not really done, because I'm reminding you again, if you apparently could do what you set out to do, it is not exactly what your cells started out to do, because that cannot be done. If you can think it, you can't have it. If you can formulate it, you cannot achieve it. And so if you apparently did do it, I'm still telling you it would not have occurred. Not exactly. So that is always flawed in the city, and no one can ever see that. And that's all I can do to get your attention for a passing second. To some of you go, yeah, I almost heard that. So we got to almost discount that one. Not discount it. All right, 20% off. All right, 20% off, and then we'll move on. But then, even if you did apparently do it, you still have unsuspected, unrecognized flaws in the reverse of the original situation. They're always there. And so all change, even when it's apparently successful, that it met the criteria I had in mind, it met the standards I had in mind for change, the best people can come up with is, well, I don't know, I misjudged. They're left with a feeling that, all right, change is possible, but goddamn, when you get down to it, change is not sufficient. I don't know whether anybody in the city would say that, but if they did, they'd be getting close to the truth. They'd be getting close to the fact that, hey, change is just reform. What you're really wanting is a revolution. What you're wanting is a new cellular phone. What you're wanting is some new molecules, some new arrangements. You're wanting new brain tissues. You're wanting new collections put together. I think I'll stop. No, I think I'll stop. First, I will say hello to Oregon. We got people in Oregon now that have arranged they're getting video copies. Started last week. I heard about last week from New York. And specifically besides hello, Mary Ann, let me tell you that people, this hello should not be going out to anybody else. Don't let the people see anything past where it says the end of the public tape. But those of you recording this for Mary Ann out in Oregon, you can start leaving the epilogues. But Mary Ann, they're just for you. I don't know anybody else out there that I want to see into this. And the tasks and excursions and comments I have. But maybe this one tape you can put it on so that they can all see me say hello, Oregon. But from here on out, anything after the public, where it says the end of public tape, that's the end of what I want shown out there. Right? Comprende? Do you dig? For everybody, although I still admit I know how busy you are, and we can't really do any new excursions if you've got your hands full. Besides the two I've mentioned recently, that's a shame that we did not have the time to do. Well, I'm going to do a little better tonight. There is one I'm going ahead and I tell you that you should do. But it's one that you should just add to your attempted code of behavior. What I was talking about the look method, about how good it would be to just look, and that people, cellularly, we are not wired up to look. And there have been would-be mystical systems and this and that. It's life still showing its own awareness in certain ways. There have been whole systems that say, shame on us, where we're not as conscious as we could be, because if you just try and be a little more aware, you can be. And all kinds of people sick and go, yeah, hey, that's right, good grief, wow. And of course, then it's gone, because we're not wired up to do that. But you can do this. Of course, I don't mean that there's nothing else possible. But I'm saying right on the surface is all you can do this. And you should do it. I'm saying you should take this as being just something that you start doing continually. As that is, just for as long as you can do it, if it's just a few seconds, will fit, is you should look around every time you go into a new room. Yeah. Now, a new room can be leaving here and walking outside in the street. A new room is you leave 42nd Street and you take a ride on 7th Avenue. You're out jogging and you turn a corner and you go down another street. You get out of your car and you go in a store. As soon as you go, all that is a new room, is what I mean. And every time you walk in a new room, just this much. Just to walk from this room into the next room. Somewhere you are all the time. You're in the bathroom. It's your house. But normally you go into another room, you go in to use the bathroom, all you do is you walk in, you go ahead. You flip on the light, you do whatever it is you're going to do, while you're thinking about what you're going to have for breakfast or what time it is, or are they actually going to fire Department 27? And then you go out and you close, you turn off the light and you slam the door. At least do this. As soon as you go into a new room, make yourself look around. In your own bathroom. I don't care if it's 3 by 5 feet, and you're in there 20 times a day. Every time you walk in that room, go. I'm telling you, is do it. When you go into a closet to get a coat to leave the house, when you open that closet door, go. Just remember this, just the term. Force yourself to look around when you go in a new room. When you walk in the bathroom, when you walk anywhere, as soon as you go in, just as soon as you go in the room, go. Trust me. Look around, damn it. Now, you should take that as not being just an excursion, not just a little task. That should be on your agenda as something to do from now on. Is force yourself just to look around. You just look right quick. Every time you go into a new room, whenever you change rooms, whenever you turn a corner, that's a new room. Every time, every little new room, it doesn't take but a second, damn it. And I'm telling you, it's important. As soon as you go in a new room, look around. Just like that. You'd be surprised. Or I looked at it another way. That's one reason to look around is so that you don't get surprised. Or, looked at another way, that's one reason to look around is to get surprised. Or another way to look at it is to look around so that, well, you don't get surprised. That'll end it for tonight. Bon voyage, Oregon. Just because when California decides to split and float off, you people don't have to go. Now, you know that. Write to us and we'll send you an anchor. But throw a rope over to Fred over in Butte and tie yourself to Montana. Because I'm sure the good people of Montana would never stoop so low as to float off with the people in California. Ciao, y'all.